It didn't happen all at once. That's the part no one ever tells you, the way betrayal creeps. It doesn't break down the door. It finds the loose window latch you forgot to check. It slips in quietly, comfortably, like someone who's lived there all along. I didn't wake up one morning and realize my life wasn't mine. It was slower, subtler, like fog rising in a familiar room, until you forget the color of the walls. It began with the small things. A signature line already filled out. A bill paid late despite money in the account. Emily shrugging casually when I asked, "Oh, I must have misread it. Don't worry, I'll take care of it." First, I believed her. Why wouldn't I? She was family, married to my only son. And Matthew, well, Matthew never looked up from his phone long enough to contradict her. So I nodded. I smiled. I thanked her for helping. That was my first mistake. I had always been the caretaker, the steady hands, the one who balanced the books, scheduled the doctor's appointments, made casseroles for sick neighbors, and never asked for anything back. When my husband died, I didn't cry at the funeral. Not because I didn't love him, but because someone had to make sure the reception sandwiches didn't spoil. Grief didn't make me vulnerable. Love did. When Matthew and Emily moved into the house temporarily, I told myself it was a blessing. They had just gotten married. He was between jobs. She was bright, ambitious. Their energy filled the rooms like sunlight. For a while it felt nice. But the sunlight faded fast. Emily had a way of talking that made you feel like saying yes was your own idea. You don't want to deal with that paperwork, do you? I can handle it. It's just easier if we move everything to one account. We'll pay you back. I didn't realize the locks had changed until the keys stopped working. Literally. One morning, I came home from the pharmacy and the back door wouldn't open. I jiggled the key, confused. When I finally called Emily, she laughed. "Oh, sorry, we had a locksmith out while you were at your book club. There were security issues. We thought you knew." I didn't say anything then. Just nodded. Again, I became a guest in my own home. My mail started disappearing. Phone calls were intercepted. I noticed new electronics, new subscriptions, charges I didn't recognize. When I brought it up, Matthew looked up briefly from his screen and mumbled, "Emily handles all that now, Mom. It's easier." Easier. For whom? There were other signs. A checkbook that vanished, then reappeared with pages torn out. My debit card accidentally left in Emily's wallet. A form shoved under my door one morning. Power of attorney already signed by her. She said it was for emergencies. I didn't sign it. Instead, I started writing things down. Every transaction, every strange document, every whispered conversation I overheard late at night when they thought I was asleep. I started keeping a small notebook tucked in my coat pocket like a secret weapon. It was the first thing I truly owned again. That's when I found Dalton. Not through lawyers. Through a friend at church whose niece had gone through something similar. Quiet theft. Not with guns but with ink. Dalton was calm, methodical. He never looked at me like I was a confused old woman. He looked at me like someone who was finally waking up. "You're not crazy," he said during our second meeting. "You're just tired of being erased." He offered me choices. Legal options. Protection. But most of all, he gave me back a voice I hadn't used in years. "You have every right," he told me. "They've made a mess. We're going to clean it up." I didn't cry. Not then. But that night I stood in the bathroom with the door locked and stared at my reflection for a long time. I touched the lines around my mouth. The gray strands they said made me look frail. I wasn't frail. I was furious. That was the beginning. The silence wasn't surrender anymore. It was strategy. While they packed for a cruise and prepped for refinancing, I was making phone calls. I signed documents. I found a buyer. A quiet buyer. A cash buyer. Someone who didn't ask questions. The house was going. The locks would change again, but this time by my hand. I didn't tell anyone. Not friends. Not the neighbors who always waved. Not even the mailman who used to leave notes asking how I was doing. This wasn't a story I was ready to tell. Not yet. Instead, I watched them from a distance. I memorized their routines. I smiled when they mentioned travel plans and nodded when Emily said, "We'll take care of everything while we're gone." Yes, I thought. You will. Because by the time you get back, there won't be anything left for you to take. The sale went through on a Tuesday. It was the kind of day people don't remember, gray, mild, forgettable. But I would remember every second. The pen felt heavy in my hand as I signed the final document. I half expected my fingers to tremble, but they didn't. I pressed the ink down with quiet certainty, like sealing a door that should have been closed long ago. Dalton watched me sign, then slid the papers into a sleek folder and clicked it shut. "That's it," he said. "That's it." He smiled. "They can't touch it. Not now. Not ever." The relief didn't come all at once. It was slow, unfamiliar, like a sunrise through frost. A gentle thaw. For so long I had lived with this invisible pressure, this weight that bent my spine and dulled my breath. But now, the moment hung there, sacred and silent. I left the courthouse alone. No victory speech. No fanfare. Just me and the echo of my footsteps against the concrete steps. When I stepped into the cool evening air, the breeze curled around me like a whisper. It's over. I didn't smile yet. Not fully. But I felt something flicker in my chest, something close. Their cruise was set to dock in 4 days. 4 days before they would stroll through customs, sun-kissed and unaware, ready to resume their carefully curated illusion of control. 4 days before they tried to finalize a mortgage on a house that no longer belonged to them. I wasn't going to tell them anything. I owed them nothing. The buyer was young, newly married. No kids yet, but hopeful. She wore colorful scarves and smelled like lemongrass. He had gentle eyes and called me ma'am, even after I asked him not to. They walked through the house slowly, reverently, like they could feel the weight of what had happened inside it. "You're sure you want to sell?" the woman had asked once. "I'm sure," I said. She smiled. "Then we'll take good care of it." That's all I needed. I moved out quietly. No moving vans. No farewells. I packed what mattered: photo albums, my mother's dishes, the quilt I sewed during the first winter after my husband died. The rest? Sold. Donated. Let go. Letting go is a skill. One I had learned the hard way. My new place wasn't grand. A modest 2-bedroom apartment with creaky floors and an outdated kitchen. But it was mine. Fully mine. No shared titles. No accounts I couldn't access. No shadow hovering behind every decision I made. Freedom doesn't have to be loud. Sometimes it's a simple set of keys that no one else has touched. On the morning they returned, I was already waiting. I parked a block away. Nothing dramatic. Just far enough that they wouldn't see me until I chose. The sun was out, deceptively bright, casting long shadows across the street. I stood under a tree, the breeze catching the hem of my coat, and watched. Their car pulled up exactly on time. Emily stepped out first. Sunglasses perched high, phone pressed to her ear, barking instructions to someone. Maybe a contractor, maybe a bank. Matthew followed, quieter as always. He was scrolling, detached. The same posture he'd had since he was 15. Then they saw it. The moving vans. 2 unfamiliar cars in the driveway. A young couple standing on the front steps, laughing. The realtor beside them, clipboard in hand, waving casually. Emily froze. Matthew blinked. And then I walked. Each step was deliberate. Not rushed. Not hesitant. Like a woman with nothing left to fear. Matthew saw me first. "Mom." His voice cracked on the word. Emily's head whipped around. Her mouth opened, but no sound came at first. She looked at me, then the house, then back at me again. "What's going on?" she demanded. "Who are these people?" The young couple smiled politely and walked inside with the realtor. The front door closed behind them. Their door now. I didn't stop walking until I stood a few feet from them, close enough for my words to land clearly. You won't need to manage anything for me anymore. Emily's face flushed. What the hell does that mean? Matthew took a step forward. Mom, why are there people in our house? Not your house, I said calmly. Not anymore. There was a pause. Then Emily exploded. You can't do this. We're in the middle of refinancing. We have contracts. I reached into my bag and pulled out the thick folder, Dalton's folder. Every page a nail in the coffin they built with their own hands. These are the only contracts that matter, I said, holding it out. Matthew took it. His hands trembled as he flipped through the pages. With every sheet, his face drained a little more. The reversal. The investigator's report. The proof. Emily snatched the folder, frantically scanning the contents. Her breathing quickened. I could see it behind her eyes, the math unraveling, the calculations failing. This won't hold up, she snapped. We were managing your finances for your own good. You'll regret this. We were trying to help. Help. I kept my voice steady. You mean draining my accounts? Gambling with debt tied to a house you didn't even own? Forging a power of attorney and hoping I wouldn't notice while you were across the ocean sipping cocktails? Emily's jaw clenched. Matthew opened his mouth, but I raised a hand. Stop. The word landed like a stone in still water. You didn't mean to get caught, I said. Silence. For the first time I saw it clearly in their eyes, not guilt. Not sadness. Just fear. The kind of fear that only comes when your prey turns out to have teeth. I reached into my bag again. This time I pulled out the second folder, thinner but heavier. If you want to take this to court, I said, holding it up, this is what you'll be facing. Emily grabbed it. Inside, the full investigator's file. Unauthorized withdrawals. Coerced signatures. Fraudulent filings. Elder financial abuse. Forgery. Emily's hands moved faster now. Her eyes darted. Her mouth opened, then closed. She looked like someone trying to outrun a train already inches away. If this becomes public, I said quietly, every detail will be on record. Every dollar you stole. Every document you forged. Matthew whispered something. So soft I almost didn't hear it. Emily, what did you do? She turned to him, her voice sharp. Don't you dare put this on me. You were fine with it when the money was coming in. He said nothing. Just stood there, the folder in his hands, his shoulders sagging under the truth. I looked at them both. The marriage that had once been so coordinated in its cruelty, now crumbling under weight they never expected to carry. I was your mother, I said to Matthew. And you made me your target. His lip quivered. And for just a second I saw him again. The boy who scraped his knees chasing fireflies. The boy who used to ask me to tuck him in. But that boy was gone. And I was done grieving him. This isn't revenge, I continued. It's protection. For the first time in years, I'm protecting myself. Emily threw the folder on the ground. You think you've won, she hissed. But you'll end up alone. I smiled, truly smiled for the first time in so long. Alone, I said softly, is better than being used. Then I turned and walked away. I never looked back. The drive home was quiet. Not the heavy kind of quiet, just still. Peaceful. The kind of silence that isn't empty but earned. I didn't play music. I didn't call anyone. I just let the road pass beneath me, winding through side streets and faded neighborhoods until I reached my building. I parked, climbed the 3 flights of stairs, and unlocked the door to my new apartment. It was small. The couch was secondhand, the curtains a little too long, but it smelled like lavender and safety. The walls were bare. I hadn't gotten around to hanging pictures yet. Still, it felt more like home than the old house ever did, especially in the last few years. I set my bag on the kitchen counter and poured a glass of water. That's when the phone buzzed. I didn't even look at it at first. I thought it might be a delivery confirmation or a neighbor. But then it buzzed again. Twice. Then 3 times. I turned the screen over. Matthew. The first message was short. Mom, please, can we talk? This isn't what I wanted. The second one came a minute later. I'm sorry. Emily got carried away. She pushed me. You know how she is. And then another. We didn't mean to hurt you. I swear. I stared at the words. He hadn't called me mom in months. Not to my face. Not since they started managing things. Not since I stopped being a person and started being a resource. Now when the bank accounts were closed, the house gone, and the damage irreparable, now I was mom again. My thumb hovered over the reply icon. I could feel the old reflex kick in. The one trained by years of keeping the peace. Of soothing bruised egos and minimizing my own pain to avoid confrontation. That voice in my head whispered all the familiar lines. He's still your son. Maybe he didn't understand what Emily was doing. Maybe he's scared. But there's a moment in every survivor's story where the silence breaks. And this was mine. I didn't respond. I set the phone face down on the counter. Let him sit with the silence. Let it grow uncomfortable. Let it echo the way I had lived for years. Because I had learned something vital. Apologies that only come after consequences aren't apologies. They're strategies. And I was no longer someone to be strategized against. Later that night he tried again. I'll come by tomorrow. We can talk in person. I didn't reply. Just us. No Emily. Promise. Still nothing. Please don't shut me out. I'm still your son. Yes, he was. But what he had become was something else. And I had grieved the boy he used to be. I had cried silently and deeply, on nights when I realized he'd chosen her cruelty over my kindness. There was no more grief left to give. The next morning my phone rang. A call this time. I let it go to voicemail. I listened to it later with coffee in hand, sitting by the window. The sky was pale blue. Birds hopping along the fire escape. Mom, please. I know we messed up. I know we crossed lines. But you didn't have to sell the house. That was our future too. Can't we just talk before you walk away forever? Forever. That word hung in the air. So heavy. So final. But the truth was I hadn't walked away overnight. I had been leaving for years, inch by inch, breath by breath. Every time they ignored my voice, manipulated my kindness, took without asking. They didn't notice because I was quiet. But quiet doesn't mean weak. I played the voicemail once more. Just to be sure I heard it right. He still didn't get it. He still thought this was about a house. By the weekend the texts grew longer. More desperate. Emily's freaking out. She says you've ruined us. That we have no options left. I told her we shouldn't have pushed you. I told her to stop sending those papers. Please, Mom. You don't have to forgive her, just talk to me. I didn't reply. They froze our accounts. The ones with your name on them. Dalton must have reported it. We got a letter in the mail. We can't even access the emergency fund. That one almost made me laugh. They'd labeled the account emergency when they created it. But they never meant my emergency. Just theirs. You really cut us off, didn't you? Yes. Yes, I did. And still silence. Because I had finally realized. Sometimes the best way to heal is not with words but with absence. Let them sit in the space they made by pushing me out. Let them hear what it sounds like when their last bridge turns to ash behind them. I went for a walk that day. Just through the neighborhood. I passed kids drawing chalk rainbows on the sidewalk, a couple walking a dog too big for their tiny frame, and an older man sitting on a bench reading a hardcover mystery with folded corners. None of them knew my story. And for once I liked that. I liked being unknown, unnoticed, free from the constant demand of being someone's obligation or pawn. When I got back, there was another message. I told Emily you gave us a warning, that we ignored every sign. She's blaming me now, says I should have stopped you. But how could I? You were always so quiet, so compliant. That's what they never understood. Quiet is not the absence of power. It's the containment of it. And when it breaks free, it's not chaos, it's clarity. The investigator called the next day. Just checking in, she said, her voice warm but professional. We received confirmation the state has opened a case file. I didn't ask which one. I already knew. Fraud. Elder financial abuse. Forgery. The trifecta of betrayal. They'll likely request a statement, she continued. Would you be comfortable providing one? I took a breath. For so long, speaking had felt like exposure. Every word I dared say used to be twisted, minimized, manipulated, mocked. But not anymore. Yes, I said. I'll talk. And I meant it. Because silence had gotten me here. But the truth would carry me forward. That afternoon, I sat at the dining table in my small kitchen with Dalton beside me and the investigator across from us. A digital recorder blinked red on the table. My hands were steady. Whenever you're ready, she said. I told her everything. Not just the fraud, not just the money. I told her about the slow erosion of trust, the pressure, the guilt games. The papers slipped under my door without explanation. The unsigned documents that magically appeared filed. The phone plans I was suddenly paying for. The joint credit cards I'd never agreed to. The way they talked about me like a problem to manage instead of a person to respect. Her pen didn't stop moving. Dalton remained silent beside me. But his presence grounded me. For the first time in years I felt believed. Meanwhile, I received no more calls. Just texts, shorter now, clipped, half-hearted. You don't have to take it this far. It's family. You're turning on family. Don't ruin everything. The irony was almost poetic. They'd ruined everything, and only now in the aftermath did they understand what everything really meant. But they were too late, and I was too tired. The state sent letters. One to my attorney, one to me. The case was moving forward. It wouldn't be fast, but it would be thorough, and it would be permanent. I went to the bank in person. Just want to confirm the freeze on any joint account still stands, I said. The woman behind the desk, a thin, serious woman with a badge reading C. Nunez, nodded and printed the documentation. I glanced down. 7 accounts. All secured. All inaccessible to anyone but me. One was new. The full cash sale from the house already sitting in it, untouched. She handed me a pen. I initialed each page slowly, deliberately. This was what reclaiming looked like. Not drama. Not spectacle. Just steady documented choice. That evening, I received one final text from Emily. You're vile. You'll rot alone in that little apartment. You betrayed us after everything we did for you. Don't think people don't see it. You're just a bitter old woman. I stared at the screen for a long time. Then I deleted the message. No screenshot. No response. No mental replay. Just gone. Because I didn't need proof of her hatred anymore. I'd lived with it for too long. And the only thing more powerful than fighting back is refusing to let it reach you at all. The apartment was quiet. The kind of quiet that wasn't empty but peaceful. Intentional. It didn't echo with other people's demands. Didn't hum with the tension of unspoken expectations. It just existed. Like I did now. That night I cooked dinner for myself. Something simple. Real food. Not the kind you eat standing over a sink because someone else took the last clean plate. Not the kind you cook under obligation. Just something warm and comforting. I set one place. Sat at the table. Ate slowly. I didn't check my phone once. No one called anyway. And for the first time in years I was glad. A week passed. I slept better than I had in a decade. The kind of deep sleep where the mind isn't spinning. Where the body isn't bracing for the next blow. My dreams were strange at first. Foggy shapes, voices I didn't want to hear. But then they changed. One night I dreamed I was standing in the ocean ankle deep. The tide pulled and returned, gentle and endless. I stood there in silence and I didn't feel fear. I felt strong. The next morning I opened the windows. Let the air move through the space. I rearranged the bookshelves. Lit a candle. Small things. But they mattered. Because they were mine. The letters from the state continued. Matthew and Emily had lawyered up. I wasn't surprised. What did surprise me was how quiet it all became. No grand gestures. No phone calls from mutuals trying to mediate. Just silence. They were playing defense now. Reacting. And I was simply living. My lawyer updated me weekly. They're trying to dispute intent, he said once. Intent. I echoed. Yes. They're claiming miscommunication. A misunderstanding of authority. I almost laughed. Almost. Instead I just said, let them. Because when you've been made invisible for long enough, your truth becomes louder than anything they try to spin. Dalton stopped by one Saturday. He brought pastries. We sat on the balcony, just 2 chairs and a small table I'd found at a second-hand shop. The sun was warm, the breeze soft. You're different, he said. I looked at him surprised. How so? You're quieter. But in a good way. Less on guard. I nodded, thinking. He was right. I still measured my words sometimes, old habits, but I didn't feel like I had to shrink anymore. I think I'm learning what it feels like to belong to myself again, I said quietly. Dalton smiled. About time. One morning I found an old photo album tucked in a moving box I hadn't touched. Pictures from before everything got complicated. When Matthew was small. When life felt full of promise. I ran my fingers over one image. Him grinning with a missing tooth, standing beside a birthday cake I'd made from scratch. For a moment the sadness returned. That aching sort of grief. Not for him but for me. For the years I gave without condition. For the love I poured into a well that never filled. But I didn't cry. I closed the album gently. Put it back. Because the past is a place for remembering, not for living. Later that week I received a letter. From their attorney. A last-ditch offer. Quiet settlement. No admission of guilt, but a promise to make things right. To avoid court. To close the chapter. I stared at the envelope for a long time. And then I set it aside unopened. Some things don't deserve your energy. Some doors don't need to be slammed. They just need to stay shut. Let them guess. Let them sit in their uncertainty. Because I no longer needed to be part of their resolution. I had my own. That night I took a walk. The neighborhood was quiet. Kids playing somewhere in the distance. A couple walked their dog across the street. I nodded politely. The breeze was cool. My breath steady. For years I walked like I was racing against time. Rushing to fix something. Avoid something. Prove something. But now my steps were slow. Measured. Free. I wasn't walking away from anything anymore. I was walking toward something new. It started with a phone call I didn't answer. Blocked number. No voicemail. But I knew. There was a certain desperation in silence, and I recognized it instantly. 2 days later, a letter came from the bank. Not mine, their old one. A standard notification forwarded accidentally to my new address. It was addressed to the previous homeowner, technically. A mortgage delinquency warning. I stared at the envelope. They didn't know I had seen it. But now I knew they were sinking. Dalton confirmed it a week later. They tried to pull equity out of your old house, he said, tapping his pen on the folder in front of him. Problem is, it wasn't their house anymore. The title was clean. Buyer's closing firm flagged it immediately. I said nothing at first. He looked at me. They're bleeding money. The cruise wasn't cheap. Neither was the attorney. They're leveraged. Still I was quiet. You okay? He asked. I'm not happy, I said slowly, but I'm satisfied. Because sometimes justice doesn't need a grand finale. Sometimes it arrives quietly, with the weight of consequence slipping through cracks they thought no one saw. Emily's name popped up on my phone. Just once. She had sent a single message. You win. That was it. No apology. No explanation. No recognition of what she had done. Just a 3-word admission of defeat dressed as something bitter. I didn't respond, because it was never about winning. It was about reclaiming. And I already had. Weeks passed. The seasons began to shift. Trees shedding their leaves. The wind a little crisper each morning. I walked more. Longer routes. Through parks, past quiet streets, beside old stone churches and little libraries on corners. I was building a life, not rushing to escape someone else's. One morning I helped an elderly neighbor carry her groceries. She reminded me of who I used to be, always doing for others, always last in line. She thanked me 3 times. Not many people help anymore, she said. I just smiled. I had to learn the hard way how important it is. And that was true. Dalton called with an update. The investigators' findings have been finalized, he said. It's all official. If they challenge anything now, it's open and shut. I nodded even though he couldn't see me. What are they doing? I asked. Nothing. Radio silence. Their attorney hasn't filed anything. Why? Because they know they'd lose. He paused, then added, they may try to spin it privately. Play the victim. Say you cut them off out of spite. I let that sink in. They've spent years writing a narrative, I said. Let them choke on it. He chuckled softly. That's the spirit. One evening I saw them. Not together, separately. Matthew first. He was sitting in his car outside the apartment building. I spotted him from the hallway window. Alone, engine running, eyes fixed forward. He didn't come to the door. Just sat there. Then 20 minutes later drove away. No note. No call. Just presence. Like he didn't know how to ask for anything real now that there was nothing to gain. A few days later I passed Emily downtown. She didn't see me. Or maybe she did, but chose not to acknowledge me. Her face looked drawn. No makeup. No sunglasses. Just a woman walking briskly with papers clutched tight to her chest. And in that moment I felt nothing. No anger. No satisfaction. No sadness. Just detachment. Because I had finally detached from the lies they'd built around me. At home I lit a candle. My apartment smelled like lavender and something warm, vanilla maybe. I brewed a cup of tea and sat on the floor with a stack of books I hadn't touched in years. One was poetry. I flipped it open randomly. A line jumped out at me. The day I left behind what broke me, I finally began. I read it 3 times. Then I closed the book and whispered it out loud. Because I had. And I was. It arrived on a rainy Tuesday. The envelope was thin, cream-colored, hand-addressed. I almost didn't open it. But something in me said to, maybe curiosity, maybe closure. Inside was a single sheet of lined paper. The handwriting was unmistakably Matthew's. No salutation. No greeting. Just words. I know I don't deserve this space, but I'm writing anyway. Because silence is heavy, and I'm not sure what else to do with it anymore. I stopped reading, breathed once, and kept going. I saw the file. All of it. I didn't want to believe it at first. I told myself you were overreacting, that you were just mad. But when I really looked, I saw what she did. What I let her do. I could feel the ink pressing deeper into the page, as if he had written it hard, fast, frantic. I thought I was protecting my family. I told myself what we took was temporary, that you'd never miss it, that once we were stable we'd give it all back. But we never got stable. We just got greedy. I placed the letter in my lap. Rain tapped lightly on the window behind me. I think about that toy truck you fixed for me. I remember sitting on the kitchen floor, watching you work with your little screwdriver and glue like it was the most important thing in the world. You never complained, never told me it was too broken to fix. And then I remember watching you cry the day I signed those papers. I pretended I didn't see it. I'm sorry. I wished that meant something. The letter wasn't long, but it was honest in a way I hadn't seen from him in years. And that alone carried weight. He didn't ask for anything. Not forgiveness. Not money. Not reconciliation. Just wrote what he needed to say and sent it. No return address. No phone number. Just a final line. If nothing else, I hope you're okay. Really okay. That's more than we deserve to know. I folded the letter, tucked it back into the envelope, and put it in the drawer beside my bed. Not to forget, but not to carry either. Because some wounds don't close with apologies. They just stop bleeding. The next morning, I walked down to the community center. They were looking for volunteers for a literacy program. Older women were needed, patient voices, calm presence, someone to read with kids after school. I can do that, I said. The coordinator smiled. You sure? It's a long commitment. I'm sure, I said. I'm staying. And that was the truth. For the first time in years, I wasn't waiting for a door to open or someone to come save me or explain themselves. I was done waiting. I was living. A week later, I heard from Dalton. He had received a formal withdrawal letter from Emily's attorney. No contest. No lawsuit. Nothing. She backed off, he said. Completely. Looks like she knows it's over. I don't want anything from her, I said. You won't get it, he replied. But you've protected yourself. That's what matters. He paused. How do you feel? I thought about it. About the years I'd spent shrinking. About the way I'd stopped buying new clothes or treating myself to coffee or saying no. I feel light, I said finally. Dalton chuckled. Good. That's a sign you did it right. That evening I opened my journal. I hadn't written in months, not since the storm had started. But now the pages called to me again. I wrote just one sentence. Silence doesn't mean surrender. Then I closed the journal, blew out the candle, and let the quiet hold me, not as a cage but as comfort. It was 3 months later. Late summer. The kind where the heat sticks to your skin and everything feels like it's waiting to change. I was at the farmer's market, holding a paper bag filled with tomatoes and fresh bread, when I saw him. Matthew. Across the stalls in line at the lemonade stand. He hadn't seen me yet. For a second I stood still, heart thudding in a way that surprised me. Not fear. Not quite pain. Just the sudden weight of memory colliding with the present. He looked smaller. Not physically. But something in his shoulders had shifted. There was no certainty in the way he held himself. His hair was longer, unkempt. His shirt wrinkled. He wasn't wearing a wedding ring. I turned, ready to walk the other way. But he caught sight of me. Mom! His voice cracked the quiet like glass underfoot. I didn't answer. Not right away. He took a few steps toward me. Not fast. Careful. Like he knew he was stepping into a space no longer his. You look good, he said softly. Healthy. I nodded once. I am. He nodded too. Eyes flickering down to the paper bag in my arms like he was searching for something to say. I moved out, he said after a pause. A few weeks ago. Emily and I. It didn't work out. I didn't respond. I just let the silence be what it was. Not cruel. Just boundary. He shifted again. I started therapy. This time something in me stirred. Not forgiveness, but recognition. I'm glad, I said quietly. His shoulders lowered. Not in relief. Just release. Like he hadn't expected even that. I don't expect anything, he added. I wanted you to know. The words floated between us, awkward but sincere. He looked older. Not just from age. From consequence. And maybe, just maybe, from reflection. "I've been reading the books you used to keep in the guest room," he said. "The ones I always made fun of. Self-help and healing and all that. Turns out they're not just for women who light candles and drink tea." I raised an eyebrow. He smiled sheepish. "I still drink coffee though. I'm not that evolved." It was a weak joke, but a human one. And I let myself soften just an inch. Not because I wanted him back in my life, but because part of healing is allowing room for others to heal too, even from far away. He looked at me like he was waiting for something, permission maybe, or a door that would not open today. I gave him a small nod, enough to acknowledge the effort, not an invitation. Then I turned, and I walked away. That night I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I didn't even write about it. I just sat by the window sipping tea, watching the sun bleed into the horizon. A quiet return to self. No storm. No shouting. No final blow. Just peace. Because that's what real closure feels like. Not dramatic. Not loud. Just finished. The next morning I went back to the community center. The children greeted me like I was their favorite part of the day. And maybe I was. There's something freeing about becoming important to people who don't want to take from you. They just want you to show up. And I did. Every time. Later that week I got a card in the mail. No return address again. Just a simple line inside. "Thank you for not yelling. I wouldn't have blamed you if you did." It made me smile faintly. Because he was right. I could have screamed. Could have thrown every pain back at him. But I had chosen something else. Not for him. For me. Because peace isn't something you find. Something you choose. The garden started with a single rosemary plant in a ceramic pot by the window. It had been on sale at the co-op, tucked between organic basil and some drooping thyme. Something about it called to me. Maybe because rosemary had always reminded me of my mother. She used to tie sprigs to the handles of her kitchen cabinets, saying it kept the air honest. I wasn't sure I believed in that kind of thing anymore. But I bought it anyway. The first morning I clipped a little and added it to roasted potatoes. I felt something settle in my chest. Not nostalgia. Not sadness. Just something quiet and rooted. I began to collect more pots. Tiny ones at first. Then larger clay planters I dragged up the narrow staircase to my second-floor apartment. Lavender. Mint. Tomatoes. A lemon tree that struggled but stayed. Soon the windowsill wasn't enough. The balcony became a soft tangle of green and color. Bees came. Birds watched. One neighbor called it, "Your little jungle." I smiled. Because that's what it was. A jungle I controlled. A space no one could enter without permission. Everything I grew had a purpose. Some for cooking. Some for scent. Some just to remind me that I could start from seed and coax something beautiful into existence again. And when my hands were in the soil, the noise stopped. No echoes of slammed doors. No paperwork or courtrooms. No texts begging forgiveness. Just the present. Just the green. One Saturday, a woman from the building next door stopped by. Her name was Lorna. She was older, maybe 70, with silver braids and the kind of laugh that made you want to tell her secrets. "I watch your garden from my kitchen," she said. "You've got good hands." I smiled, wiping sweat from my brow. "I'm learning." She knelt beside me without asking, her hands deft and sure. "Want help with that basil? You're planting it too close to the tomatoes." I handed her the spade. And in silence, side by side, we replanted what needed space. Later, she brought me cuttings of her own. Peonies. Lemon balm. A sapling fig she said she'd been trying to grow for years. "Some plants don't root easy," she said. "But if they do, they're yours forever." I knew she wasn't just talking about plants. The garden became more than a hobby. It became a ritual. A daily reclaiming. Each morning I opened the balcony doors, coffee in hand, barefoot on cool tile. Each evening I misted leaves, brushed away aphids, tucked herbs beneath shade if the sun had burned too long. Sometimes I whispered to them. Sometimes I cried. But mostly I grew. In time, neighbors began to stop by. Children came to water the pots when I was away. A young woman from down the hall brought her dog over, and the pup learned to sit among the sunflowers. It wasn't a house. It wasn't the grand backyard I once landscaped to impress family that never really saw me. But it was mine. And it was growing. One night, a storm rolled in. Heavy wind, sharp rain, thunder like cannon fire. I watched helplessly as the wind battered my garden. Pots overturned. Leaves snapped. The lemon tree fell sideways. I stood behind the glass, hand on the cold window, heart tight. But when the rain stopped, I went out. I righted every pot, trimmed every broken leaf, and I replanted, because I'd learned by then, storms don't mean the end. They mean beginning again, stronger, wiser, and less afraid. By the end of summer, the rosemary had doubled in size. I clipped a bundle, tied it with twine, and laid it on my kitchen table. It made the air smell like memory and possibility, like honesty, like home. It arrived on a Wednesday. I almost didn't check the mailbox. Most days it was filled with credit card offers or flyers for takeout I never ordered. But something about the way the envelope sat, heavy, deliberate, handwritten, made me pause. No return address. Just my name in a familiar hand I hadn't seen in years. Matthews. I stood in the stairwell, fingers frozen, heart beating slow and low like a drum in deep fog. For a moment I considered throwing it away, dropping it straight into the recycling bin, walking back upstairs and never looking back. But I didn't. I carried it inside, set it on the table, walked away. An hour passed, then two. Finally, with tea gone cold beside me, I opened it. It wasn't long, just a page and a half. Blue ink, the kind of handwriting he used to have before text replaced everything tender. Mom, I know I have no right to ask anything. I don't expect forgiveness. Maybe I don't even deserve to be heard. But I've been sitting with everything. And I think you were right. You gave us everything. And we turned it into leverage. I don't have excuses. But I want you to know that since that day in the driveway, I haven't stopped thinking about it. About how calm you were. How steady. How strong. Emily and I, it's not the same. Maybe it never was. I know I helped her hurt you. I know I let it happen. But the worst part is I don't think I even saw you as a person anymore. Just as someone who'd always fix it. Who'd always say yes. I see you now. And I'm sorry. I don't expect anything back. I just wanted you to have this. To know I'm trying to understand what I cost you. Love, Matthew. I sat with the letter for a long time. Not crying. Not angry. Just still. The words weren't perfect. They didn't undo what had been done. They didn't refill drained accounts or erase the weight of the betrayal. But they were something I never expected. An acknowledgement. Not from the boy I once knew, but from the man who had finally seen his mother as a human being. That night I didn't text him back. I didn't call. But I didn't throw the letter away either. I folded it carefully, placed it in the drawer beside my journal, and let it be. Some wounds don't heal with words. But truth, when spoken without agenda, can plant a seed. And seeds, I'd learned, could grow into anything, if you chose to water them. The knock came just after noon. Soft. Hesitant. The kind of knock that doesn't demand, only asks. I wasn't expecting anyone. Not a delivery. Not a neighbor. And certainly not company. Still, I rose from the couch, tea in hand, the quiet of my apartment like a held breath. I opened the door slowly, and there he was. Dalton. Not in a suit this time. No leather briefcase. Just jeans, a button-down, and the faintest smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. I was in the neighborhood, he said, almost sheepish. Thought I'd check in. I blinked, then stepped aside. "Come in." He didn't stay long. Didn't need to. He brought a small file, final paperwork confirming that every loose thread had been tied, every account settled, every asset clean. "You're free," he said simply, placing the file on the table. I nodded, but then he didn't leave. Instead, he leaned back in the chair, watching me carefully. Not professionally, not as a client, just watching. "You look different," he said. I raised a brow. "Lighter. Like someone who's slept without checking the locks 3 times. I smiled. "A real one." "I guess I have." He hesitated. Then, "Do you ever wonder what's next?" The question hung in the air, delicate as silk. I thought about it. For a long time, all I'd thought about was getting out, escaping the grasp of people who'd carved my generosity into their weapon. But now, for the first time, I was allowed to think beyond survival, beyond protection. I sipped my tea. I used to wonder who I was without being someone's lifeline, someone's safety net. "And?" he asked. "I'm still figuring it out." He smiled. "That's the best part." He stood to leave. I walked him to the door. At the threshold, he paused, turned. "If you ever need anything, not as your investigator, just someone you can call." I nodded. "Thank you, Dalton." And I meant it. Because some people enter your life to extract, but others arrive to hand you the scissors when you need to cut yourself free. It had been 3 months. 3 quiet, deliberate, healing months. There was no grand ceremony, no dramatic finale, just space, time, solitude that wasn't lonely but restorative. I learned to cook for one again, not with sadness but freedom. I hung art on the walls for no one's taste but my own. The furniture didn't match, and I loved it that way. Some nights I'd curl up with a book, others I'd fall asleep on the couch, warm tea gone cold beside me. For the first time in decades, every moment was mine. I'd picked up old hobbies like forgotten letters in a drawer, sewing, painting, walking for no reason other than watching the world move. The money was safe. The paperwork finalized. The house now belonged to the young couple who sent a thank you card after their first month. A photo of their dog in what used to be my garden. I smiled when I saw it. I didn't miss the house. Not the walls. Not the memories woven with obligation and erasure. I missed the idea of family, but not the people who had twisted the word until it resembled ownership. I'd seen Emily's name once in the local paper. A small real estate blip. A listing that fell through. And Matthew? He still texted sometimes. Small messages. "Thinking of you." Or, "Hope you're okay." But I never responded. Not out of cruelty. Out of clarity. Some silences are necessary. Some answers are choices. He had made his. So had I. One crisp Saturday, I walked to the local bookstore. A small corner shop with a creaky floor and a sleepy cat who napped in the mystery section. I lingered longer than I planned, thumbing through novels and poetry. The owner struck up a conversation. I found myself laughing. It wasn't about escape anymore. It was about living. I joined a community center the next week. Signed up for a watercolor class. Baked banana bread for the potluck. No one knew who I had been. Only who I was, and that was enough. One morning I woke before dawn and made coffee. I stood by the window watching the street slowly fill with sunlight. The same breeze that once followed me out of the courthouse passed through the open window, stirring the curtains. I thought about everything that had happened. The lies, the betrayal, the silence, the fire I had walked through quietly, fiercely. And then I whispered, for no one but myself, "I'm still here." I wasn't broken. I wasn't bitter. I wasn't anyone's victim. I was someone who survived, who chose peace when offered chaos, who chose herself when no one else did. And that was the beginning, not the end.